kind of a journey of what I've gone through in hopes of helping the young entrepreneur at heart to learn from things that were both successful and not so successful. I think that's a big valuable thing that anyone can glean from, especially when they're starting out early in their career. And that can be, as early as middle school or high school when they're thinking about ideas. And then a bit we'll touch on is around AI and how things have evolved in some of the work that I've been doing with GeniWorks. And then, but some sessions that we can go through just to, kind of get the conversations going. So let me bring up a couple slides and let me know if you can all see this. Aisha, does it work?
It's working. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. So, as Aisha said, my name is Jay Allardyce. So I am the Chief Product Officer for Octave, which is a soon-to-be spun out company of a parent company called Hexagon. And we focus on software for the industrial landscape. What does that mean? That is all about software that construction companies and operators use to build roadways, buildings, power plants, anything that is a physical infrastructure
Nghe
that
cái
we
này ăn
rely
không?
on
Được
day in
không?
and day
Không,
out.
không. Nghe làm miếng trả là đi anh Duy. Không, đó không đó đi.
Oh, there we go. Okay. And and as a result of that, joined it just now a couple months ago to really help build into a space I think that is one of the most opportunistic times in I would say the industry to help really bring the notion of data and AI together with first principles engineering. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the other part is for myself that I've been with a company called GeniWorks, which now today is the largest AI community on LinkedIn that has a very large social presence that's helped others to build their audience and awareness. So kind of two very different topics, but there is a thread between them that's kind of unique. So what I thought I'd do is talk a little bit about my journey, a little bit about two topic areas that I think are going to be where I want to get folks kind of input and interest is around motives and mindset. And then this, as we think forward in this AI-driven world, how people can approach it if they're just starting out. I don't mean to be the expert when it comes down to model build and definition and the so forth. So this is really a viewpoint of us being able to help share some thoughts, hopefully to spark an interest for those that are potentially in technology or even well beyond, just given the applicability of it. So just to start it off, the statistics are real. So if anyone here, hands up, or you can put a emoji into the chat, what have you, are interested in becoming, an entrepreneur or want to build their own business. So feel free to chime up there. But the reality is here. We say that 100% of entrepreneurs fail, and this is not that people fail and walk away never to do things again. It means it's a continual learning as an entrepreneur because there is not a playbook. There's not something that you have figured out first time out of the gate. It might take you one time, two times, three times, maybe four times to build that repeat knowledge. And it's really rare that many people think of it coming into business that they want to become the next billion-dollar company or help to create the billion-dollar company, therefore the unicorn. The reality of the statistics really show that that is not the case for the mass majority of companies. So part of this is when you think about this is what are you in business for? And that's gonna be one of the big things we're gonna talk about. And that comes to the point when you talk to a lot of people, they do want to be an entrepreneur. And the ultimate question is why? What is the motivator for you? What is the intrinsic aspect of this that powers you? And the reason why I frame it this way to start with is so often people will get into it to say they want to make money. And that's absolutely okay as a driver. But oftentimes there are deeper things that you really want to attach to that are going to get you through the really bad days, as well as the kind of mediocre days, and even the good days, right? So there's going to be something that is really going to speak to you well, that truly is going to unlock, I believe, the gift that most everybody in this world has in doing something that's greater than themselves and doing so in service of others. And so it, for me, talks a bit about this notion of purpose versus status. What do I mean by this? Is that oftentimes some people will look, especially through the social media lens of things, that everyone else's life looks grandiose and things are all put together and working just fine. But you have to be mindful that is a snapshot. It is not an everyday life for all things, for all people. So you might associate that success is equated to making a lot of money or being on TV or being, in the social light of some sort of arena. All those things are well and good, but the intention behind that perhaps should be the thing that you think about. And really, for me, it is a notion that purpose is greater than status because it will be the thing, as I said before, that propel you when times are really tough. And as an entrepreneur, times will get tough. You just have to assume it will. But every time of those tough times that do present themselves are nothing more than learning opportunities to help sharpen you for the next step and the next step thereafter. So for my journey, I'll start it off this way. Early years, when I say early years, that's everything from, I think first job was when I was 10. So everything from lawn and pool care to being a busboy, having a paper route, being a bag boy and a server. So a lot of service industry related stuff. And really just getting out there. And I think what has helped to fuel me early on has been the grit of realizing that, some of these things are not fun things to do. And sometimes, as a youngster, you don't really feel like you fit into what's happening. But it really helped to shape me. One, I think for the respect of work, as well as respecting others that you work with, and really trying to create a sense of, I would want to say for myself is a strengthening of character of really how do I show up in a service of helping others when I can, in that regard. So it started off for me in this notion of kind of big company jobs. So I went out of school and went straight into HP. I was very fortunate as the market was turning, and had a variety of roles through that period of time. And I think sometimes, people will say, and you'll hear this in the market, that you need to be at a job for 2 years and go to the next one. And I had that in my mind, but I didn't know why. And I felt really actually out of place when I wasn't moving every 2 years to another company. So I had kind of that imposter syndrome or the FOMO or the fear, whatever it was. Um, and I think in so much now, if I reflect on it after 25 years, is, finding the things that you really motivate and interest you. And you can do that with one company throughout its lifetime or go to multiple companies. Either route is okay. So don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise, because it should be an inherent driver of things that matter most to you. And so for me, I really wanted to, focus my time on building new things, trying to build something, and finding a way that I could do that within the big company, which really it was very, very interesting for me in a lot of the process. But I went from HP to another two-letter company called GE, to focus on software in the built environment, so large industrial technology environment, and continued on with that in a startup called Uptake, doing something very similar, and helping to build predictive analytic models and capabilities for enterprise industrial customers. And then after that, spent some time at Google. I think a lot of people aspire and believe of going to Google. I think it's a great place, a lot of things to learn. Um, and I was there for about 3 years across Google Cloud in partnerships, as well as building a couple businesses with two key partners in the space. And the last stop took me into private equity. And I wanted to go into a private equity backed company, thought that was an alignment to a lot of things I've done in the past, and being GM of a multi-hundred million dollar business. And I thought that was all well and good. And back in May, I told the group when I presented this, I said I actually just left the role. And the reason why I did was, the fulfillment aspect. For me, it does come back to purpose. It does come back to something that is going to inherently motivate and move you. And when you realize that, it is the thing that I think is the biggest character builder and always a reference back to your own character. And so often we look at the externalities of money and time spent away from family, what have you. All those things play important elements to the satisfaction of what you do. But I think so many that I have talked to over my career have really felt trapped in their job and their role, therefore becoming a challenge to what they focused on and really wanted to yearn to learn more. Now, that all being said, you see, okay, big company, wait a minute, what does that have to do with being an entrepreneur and startups? I'll be very clear. The entrepreneurial aspect of things, it's a mindset. It is a mindset of being a builder, and whether that is starting your own company or working in a new division in a company or being a part of a company, it's a mindset of how you approach a problem that is always about Can this be done differently? So what did I do? I did go into a variety of startups over that same period of time. Um, and and for me, the big purpose was you'll see a continuation throughout all of this is building a hedge fund at a business school while we try to effectively try to make capital access of certain hedge fund vehicles available to all. We felt from a purpose perspective that it shouldn't be revered just to the ultra wealthy, but it should be something that should be put in the hands of many people to benefit from. This all happened during the market downturn in 2008, and for many of you, you weren't around during that time. For some of us on the call, we were. It was a very, very challenging time in the market. But nonetheless, great startup idea from the beginning. We actually wrote a paper in business school. I think I still have the paper. I think we got a C minus, a collective group of five of us. Our marketing professor said, there's no way this is going to work. Doesn't make sense. You guys have got it all wrong. We said, okay, well, we're going to go prove it to ourselves that we understood it. So we ended up raising 10 million, foreign investors, built a track record, and we're operating in the top 5% of hedge funds in 2007. And unfortunately, the 2008 market actually tested the model that we built. The only other time that that model had seen such deviation from the norm was during the Great Depression. And so a lot of big learnings in this. So we ended up having to shut down the company over a period of time and return investor capital that remained. And a significant learning of which, I take as just a foundation of, realizing as an entrepreneur, you're not going to get all things right. But one thing you will get right is not giving up. And so that took me on into another one, which was building a product area within a big company, the energy and sustainability management business. And this was on a principle of how do you think about helping to change behavior vis-a-vis applications for what people consume, use, and waste relative to natural resources. I had the fortunate opportunity of doing that as an entrepreneur, if you will, versus an entrepreneur being outside of a company, doing this within the company of HP, which was a lot of fun for a variety of reasons and really piqued the interest of some of the career steps I've taken thereafter. The third one was Explore. Built this during COVID. And the simple principle behind this one was with so many people being enamored with screens, mobile phones being the majority of them because you have basically a computer in your pocket, that more people were spending time on the device versus the number one screen out there, which is Mother Nature. If you can spend time outdoors, and whether that's just being in the sun, being in the weather, taking in what this awesome world has to offer, for us, it was a principle of like, just go spend more time, being more active, being more present with what is probably one of the best screens out there. And I'd still argue is today, and something that I enjoy being a part of. And for this one, this actually, we built it as COVID was starting to launch, if you will, and the unfortunate shutdown of businesses. And so it forced my co-founder and I to take different paths, just financially, for family reasons. And so we kind of parked it for a little bit, and said, okay, well, we'll get back to doing something specifically here. But the principle behind this one for us was, as an outdoor sports platform, is, there's a lot of things we wanted to solve, and we ended up trying to solve too many. The reality is we should be very clear, something specific that we could bring to market that has demonstrable value and continue to build upon that. So for a variety of reasons, we kind of parked it. And actually, we'll get back to it. Actually, was just with him yesterday, and he's building some new capabilities around it. So we'll see where it goes in future. The last one here is GeniWorks. And this today is a thriving company that I'm very fortunate and thankful to be a part of as a board member and founder. And the simple principle by GeniWorks has been really to say, how do you help people discover, learn, and grow through all things AI? And we started with the realization that you're not going to fight the social norms, being that of social media or the tooling. So we said, well, if we could help provide content that could help anyone on their journey with AI, then maybe we've done something good in that contribution. And so the company today is about 3 million ARR, has about 40 people focused on it. Today is about, you'll see some more detail a little bit, about 13 million, followers, if you will, across different social properties globally. And I feel very passionate about this one because I realized we're in such an age when it comes to this topic about retraining how you think about critical thinking and how you approach a problem using AI tools. And that is really an opportunity, I think, for so many, especially starting out in career, to really have a completely different approach than maybe someone that is far along in career like myself, where I'm having to retrain my approach. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'll summarize in saying this. Was this easy? Does it look like it was a linear path? The answer is completely no, all the way across the board. There were moments of just absolute euphoric excitement to complete lows to complete, I don't know what I'm doing. And part of this really taught me, one, I think the resiliency, but also two, to continue to believe in myself and realizing that, for every successful entrepreneur, there are thousands of entrepreneurs that aren't successful. And I've been a part of that bucket of those that hadn't been successful in terms of what the market would bear as successful. And I think that the thing that comes back to me is the purpose of what you're doing this for. And is it something that you truly believe that you can, anchor your energy and passion into, that will carry you forward? And so from that, that's just a little bit of my perspective. I'll dive into GeniWorks here in a bit. So, oh, I already hit all this, but so yeah, so some learnings across all these different, startups, if you will, as well as big companies. And you realize that, life is never going to deal you a perfect hand. It is always about what you do with it that matters most. In realizing that everything that is difficult is nothing more than a learning because you feel uncomfortable about it, you're uncertain about it, but just have a bit of resolve that there are people that you can work with or have a conversation with to help you through some of that. And I can easily say that now, 25 years in, looking back at all those difficult times, and probably would tell my younger self to just progress at it a little bit more than I did and not allow the external noise to tell me that this isn't going to be successful or this is going to be the challenge. And I think that is something I can take with great confidence. And I think for any young entrepreneur is to have that embrace and realize that you are going to have 100 no's for the one yes each and every time. And all those no's are nothing more than intent signals to help you shape the betterment of that yes. So never to be discouraged. And as someone would always, a good friend always would tell me is just, run your own offense. Be something that you're able to push forward if you believe in it. Because oftentimes the crazy are misunderstood. The misunderstood ultimately will figure out their path because they believe and they have conviction in it. And that's going to be the thing that carries you forward. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about motives. What drives you? So this is going to be a bit of the interactive conversation for a couple of minutes. But, is it fame? Is it fortune? Is it status? Is it for others? So I'd love maybe just anyone who'd love to come off camera or chat just to share with the group, what is it? And this is a safe zone to have conversation and no judgments are passed. So I'd love just to see if anyone has a perspective of what drives them.
Me personally, I think freedom, freedom to do what I want, flexibility, and just kind of be as creative as possible. It'd be awesome if I could solve a problem and also just be proud of, you know, creating something for everybody and myself.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Jay, I was down at Mission College yesterday speaking to students at in the business program there, and I was chatting with Matthew, their lecturer, who's also on an advisory board, and he was telling me his journey from going from, investment banking to teaching full time at Mission College, and how passionate he's been about that change. And this was a lot that we talked about yesterday to the students was how you have to be passionate about what you're doing, especially as an entrepreneur. And for me, I've made a choice to pursue nonprofit. I could make more money in the corporate sector. I used to be 20 years in the legal profession, and I chose to do what I do because I feel so strongly about it. And also things like you were talking about flexibility, the fact that I get to work remotely, I can work from home, I have the bandwidth to do other things. So it's both like I love what I do and the payoff for me is worth it because I love getting up every day.
I love it, Melissa. And it shows. I mean, as you and I know each other, it shows in such an eloquent way because it comes through in the work that you're doing. And that's the authenticity that people see. And frankly, it's the thing that investors invest in, is if they can see that authenticity for every entrepreneur. Great. Okay. We'll keep it going. And as there's more, we'll pause. Um, So, a couple things about mindset. And I say this just purely as an entrepreneurial journey that oftentimes when we're young, we kind of think the world is against us or we think things are unfair. That might be our parents, it might be our teachers, it could be our bosses. And so, if there's one thing that I can impart for everyone is that mindset is going to constantly be the thing that will get you through the difficult scenarios and also help you really think about how your attitude is what ultimately shows up and how you react to some of these situations. And so, as I'll often say to my young kids at times that they'll be like, why are you blaming everybody? Well, it's because they did this to me. I'm like, okay. And then you explain just how things operate together. And it's all well and good as you learn through these processes. But one thing I think about too, sometimes people end up blaming themselves for so many things that have gone wrong or things that have gone wrong that are not in their control. And that's really defeatist, right? For someone who I think is bright and capable, it can move forward. But if you have a lot of this blame yourself mentality, right, you're going to really bog yourself down. And I can see that in firsthand. As a youngster, I did a lot of that. And it was for some reason I didn't want to let people down, but I felt like it could have been better. I could have tried to do this better, this, that, and the other. So this perfectionism aspect is a really challenging thing. And I realized that it is all about incremental impact and being able to evolve through as you do things, and not getting upset because you didn't get it right the first time. And as an entrepreneur, you have to constantly realize that, it's always the two steps forward, one step back, or you can come up with a number count in that regard, but never blame yourself for the things that you're trying. Only kind of reflect on the things of saying, hey, what did I learn from this? What can I do better in this situation? Because that feedback that you might get from individuals is the most powerful thing you can have to help you in your journey. Without that feedback, it's hard to know of are you progressing in the right way or not. So therefore, it really comes down to your mindset. So I leave it with this part of this notion, yes, and it's an element around conscious leadership, which have become a big fan over the last decade, is building upon an idea and a thought that someone has, because the way that you communicate and the way that you show up really matters. And if you're accepting someone else's viewpoint and are able to see it and evolve from it, that is absolute power when it comes to teamwork, which we'll talk about in a bit, which I know is one of the biggest challenges entrepreneurs think about. Should I hire my friends? Should I be working with someone I don't know? What does this mean? And a lot of it comes down to how you can show up and work with others by first accepting and understanding how they can work and how they do work and how they show up. Okay, so one of the earlier comments was mentioned about, is this for, yourself or for others? And that's a big question that I always put out there for everybody. And sometimes you think about the for yourself. And if this becomes the primary reason for a lot of the things that you do, it's really a moment to actually step back and reflect a little bit of why. Why is it that you want to be in the limelight or you want it to be about you? Is it about proving something for yourself? Is it about proving something for others? Is it about comparing yourself with others that are out there? And sometimes those might be interesting motivators to really push you forward. But oftentimes it may be something where you come from that you don't feel good about. And so when you think about framing it differently, are you building something that has value for others that in turn is value for yourself? You're going to 10x everything that you're going to do. And with that mindset, it really comes with something that I do appreciate or appreciated since early years is this notion of servant leadership. If you can find ways where you're really putting your energy and effort, and that can be everything from money, time, and expertise to help somebody else through something, you will find the rewards of that quite significantly. In a way that, I think for many, it's a kind of are you a giver versus a taker? And there's moments where taking things is absolutely important. But 9 times out of 10, if you're able to really give of what it is you're doing, you yourself as an entrepreneur and a leader are paving a way for others that perhaps don't have as much conviction or voice or potentially confidence in what they're doing. But they're going to see and emulate through your work to say, wait a minute, I can do that as well. So think about that. You do really carry something as an entrepreneur that is putting yourself out there, which is very difficult, but also can be a very great motivator for others. So, all right, let's do this quick 5-minute challenge. So think about this. When I say examine your heart, oftentimes, you think with your head or you think with your heart, like what is it that is really, pushing and putting you forward? What are your intentions? What are your motives? What are your drivers? I think it was a great example shared a little bit before about building something for others and in turn it being beneficial for you. And so I would love to just hear any thoughts that folks have, kind of like as you think about your startup idea or something you want to get involved in, what speaks to you the most, and where does that come from? Any takers?
People are
Anybody
being
like to
shy,
share?
huh?
I know.
It's okay.
I've just been doing a lot of research lately, following people on YouTube that interest me, keeping up with what AI is doing and all the tools that are available just because there's so many, there's dozens of them. But what I thought in terms of creativity was developing an app using AI and trying to figure out what niche would be optimal. There's just so many ideas out there. There's like a startup page that I follow that deals with apps specifically on YouTube, and
Hmm.
he basically is a podcast guy and he just interviews people one by one, and some of the ideas that they have are just mind-blowing to me. Because some of them you wouldn't think they would work, but then they do. So I think I'm just trying to write down as many good ideas as I can in my journal and then figure out how I would execute them. Just because, I would be doing it solo, I'd be doing it by myself and just trying to figure out what um, AI apps would be, useful. Everything's free online, so it's just kind of just carving out the time to do it because I know it's
Hmm.
going to take quite a bit of time. So. Yeah, my new goal right now is to try to develop an app. I don't know what yet, but that's kind of my aspirations at the moment in terms of like entrepreneurship. Being a founder of something would be really cool. Um, yeah.
Very cool. Well, we'll get into a little bit of it of how to hone into potentially things that are interesting and impactful, so it doesn't feel like wow, there's every idea. Which one do I pick first? Cool. Any other thoughts from anyone? Okay. All right. We'll keep it going. All right. So mindset. So we'll go into another quick one before we get into some of the specifics. So can do, can't do, right? I think this sounds so basic. But as I realize, as I talk to young entrepreneurs or, my kids that are in that zone as well, there's a lot of, I can't do this, from even basic things, such as I can't close the trunk of the car. Like, well, I saw you do it a couple days ago. Why can't we do it now? Oh, I'm not tall enough for these reasons. Like, I can't. Dad, can you just do it? Right? And I understand the aspect of certain things that can't be done for a variety of reasons. But in situations where you feel like you can't do something, as an entrepreneur, that is nothing more than just getting outside of your comfort zone and trying it. And, from this point of view is so many times people think about this of like, are you willing to try? And that might answer a question of like, well, maybe I'm not at all. I don't want to. But be there, willing to try, especially, last comment about all the different applications. No one's telling you no. Everyone's giving an opportunity to say yes. Just figure out how to hone and fine tune it, which we'll talk about. The second of the can versus can't do is kind of the fearfulness. I'm fear of failure. I'm fear of being ridiculed because I put something out there and I get all this negativity of it. And what's really tough, especially for youngsters, and I empathize with this, is that the social media is not friendly. You will have a lot of people that you've never met face to face, nor will they ever sit there willing to listen to you or shake your hand, but yet they'll comment about everything of what you're doing is bad. And I can say it firsthand experience, it is not fun. But I will say the resiliency through this is, you know what? What others say doesn't matter. And the opportunity is I will take goodness from those that are providing it. And for others that are simply off course on it, I won't let it get to me. So think about that because, as I said before, as an entrepreneur, you will have 100 no's before you have one yes. Sometimes you have 1,000 no's and one yes. And the resiliency that you have yourself comes from knowing that what others say do not matter. They're only data points. Your chore and idea is whether I want to take it in, to absorb it, to use it to the benefit, or not. It's nothing more than that. The iteration versus perfection, told you about this one. I was too much in the perfection aspect of things and then beating myself up because it wasn't perfect. Or oftentimes spending way too much time trying to perfect something and overdoing it and missing the market. So, as an entrepreneur, you want to iterate, and the tools that we will talk about in a bit afford you such an amazing time to iterate your ideas as long as you want to stay awake for a given day or 2 days. So, meaning the system and feedback loop that you can get is so, so valuable. And I can't tell you how excited I am when it comes to taking an idea and saying, well, what if we could do this? What if we could do this? And having a challenge on it to reset how I think. Whereas the old way would be, well, I have to sit down and go talk with folks. I have to get their time, calendar it, do a very structured feedback, review cycle. The next thing you know, that's a month. And whereas you probably could have iterated dozens, if not hundreds of times in that period of time to refine your thinking to make that interaction with somebody even more valuable. The last point is the notion of outcome focused. To me, this has been a big learning in my journey that, you can have an idea and you want to deliver on it, but what is the outcome? What value does it create for the end individual? Meaning, are they willing to pay for it? Does it help solve a problem for them that someone is willing to pay for or use? And if you're unable to answer those basic questions, it will be a natural test that maybe this is nothing more than a great idea, but an idea that maybe someone will actually use their wallet, if you will, to pay for it or their time to use it as well. Okay, there's a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's worthwhile in our realm of AI. And I want to just talk about this real quick. So what you see here is kind of like how to redefine a bit of the problem. And this has been my journey over the last 25 years. And I use this today in the work that I'm doing, which actually builds a lot of these, or software that helps to build a lot of these type of power plants. And this might be a 2x1 combined cycle gas plant somewhere in the middle of our US country, perhaps. And so part of what you want to think about in this new world of AI, again, is what problem are you trying to solve? What is an intended outcome that you're trying to solve for? And when you think about decisions with precision or insights, meaning like the amount of data or the type of data that you could use to help answer that question that supports the outcome and that problem to be solved. You might also further ask what additional data could be valuable to helping to solve that problem. And then ultimately, how does this actually fit within my enterprise? So why do I ask the questions the way I do in this way is you might be talking to somebody who runs 100 power plants that might have a very large budget and trying to maximize how these things run because ultimately these are things in our physical world that today allow us to have these conversations. If power is not provided to our home, we're not able to potentially cook, we may not be able to potentially have a conversation or have the lights on. And I know many folks in the world do not have access to clean power or power in general. So this is an afforded luxury. But that being said, when I think about this problem, if I'm a power plant operator, I want to make sure this thing is running to the peak performance so that it can produce the power that can ultimately be passed down through the utility so we can have conversations like this. That's a very basic example, but when I think about it, sometimes they use information around this power plant. Sometimes I will look at a physical world and say, what all data can I get access to help me answer some of these questions? So in this case, they're looking at work order data. That's data when people walk around the plant and they're managing it for issues and maintenance related activities that might have indicators as to when something went wrong, if maybe this plant wasn't working, that therefore couldn't supply power to the market. But there's a lot more information that becomes very valuable. And why do I build it this way? Whether it's power pricing, air quality, demand, labor, weather, elevation, all these things are signals that can improve the prediction of how this plant might work and how it might stay online and how it might provide better power to us as end consumers. So I picked this as an example because for many, they're like, I don't even know what this is. Why would you even put this example here? But parlay this when you think about your idea, who your end user is. Are they using an application? What information is valuable to help them make a decision? And where might I get that data from? And when you think of it in those basic terms, you're not stuck with all the other things that could bombard you with, well, this competitor does that, this competitor does that. I have this one using this one, and creating a lot of confusion. You want to be able to be very clear from an outcome to potentially the data and the data models that you use and what data you have access to solve that problem. And so in this particular case, it answers some questions for an operator, which is I want to improve my availability and reliability of this piece of equipment, which happens to be a very expensive power plant. Can I produce power at a certain rate with a certain amount of margins? So therefore it's profitable, it's performing well. And I'm using, precisions and insights to know I have more information that can help me understand how this might work and help make sure that it's on and available. And if I'm an owner of this, I'm not just looking at one power plant, I'm looking at 150 of these. What can I learn from this particular one of why something failed that I could take into the other ones to build repeatability? So why do I give this completely off, subject direct example? For one basic thing is that as an entrepreneur, you want to go into and start to understand pattern recognition. And that comes with and time again of doing things multiple times over so that you see an example of something, but you can take that and make that a reference example to another part of a market or another application. And oftentimes, as an entrepreneur, you're never going to get something right the very first time out of the gate unless you had a lightning strike moment and the perfect team and what have you. But oftentimes, you're building up repetition time and time again that you can take into the next opportunity. So we'll get to this why this matters very well back to the AI topics and what do you start with first. Um, let's flip into a different segment here. So, failures, and I've went through a number of them, and some I could say are those catastrophic, such as, what, I'm just gonna pack things up and not do this again. Certainly, have had those moments as an entrepreneur, and even in large company work. You put your heart and soul into a project, and something doesn't go right, and you take the blame both personally, professionally, perhaps maybe more so than you need to. But nonetheless, when you think about this, as I always tell, my kids or I tell others, is that, failures are just nothing more than Lego blocks. They're opportunities. You're going to stack that. You're going to say, wow, what did I learn from this? And the moment you can flip that and get rid of the emotion, and it's okay to grieve and get upset for a moment, but don't let it drag on for weeks and months and their ends. And that's oftentimes the most challenging that people have is they just don't want to get back on the horse again. They don't want to go try because they don't want to fail again. But realize that if you are an infinite learner, this idea of constantly learning and finding everything that's interesting, you'll forever realize that there is so much to learn, there's so much opportunity, and you can have a smile on your face day in and day out. Because that curiousness is the thing that, as an entrepreneur, you are really constantly trying to find different ways to approach a problem in solving potentially something that could be very, very valuable for people. But again, oftentimes we look at our failures as big setbacks and things that, unfortunately would shape us in a negative way. That's never to be the case. And I don't want any young entrepreneur to feel that because they're nothing more than learning opportunities for you. Okay, so the how versus the who. And what this kind of comes down to is on the how side of things, this little whatever meme, as my daughters would say when I first asked them about a meme, I said, what about a meme? They're like, Dad, it's not a meme, it's a meme. I'm like, okay, Clearly, I'm showing my age. But nonetheless, is sometimes, when you do feel like as an entrepreneur, you're trying to solve everything at yourself at one time, you're overloaded. It's a complete hot mess, right? And you feel that stress and you feel all the burden on yourself. And one of the greatest resources that you need to have as an entrepreneur, whether in a big company or outside of a big company, is your network and realizing how you tap others to help you through a difficult moment or helping you just to ideate on a particular topic. And why this is so powerful for everyone, and it sounds so basic, but a lot of us don't, is because we want to self-solve it. We say, oh, no, no, I'll just take care of it. I got it myself. And then you're up late at night and you're frustrated and you're like, oh gosh, I need more help from people. Well, you have to realize that the power of this is who you can reach out to. And this might be in terms of investors, it might be in terms of feedback on a particular product idea or access to a given company, or maybe an introduction to somebody else that you don't know, but you found through LinkedIn or Handshake or other tools as such. And so the point of this is really important for you to think about how do you surround yourself with those individuals that can be, in many ways, I would say, not mentors the whole time, because being a mentor, which I absolutely believe is vitally important, but oftentimes a lot of people intend to do, but really don't devote enough time to be able to really truly be a mentor. And that's to no one's fault. It takes time and effort and conviction to do so. But you can build loosely coupled relationships with folks that can help you through things that you don't know. And again, that's where experience of those that have been through it multiple times can be very beneficial to help you go left when you thought you needed to go right on something. And so start to think about that as your network. That can be very valuable for you when you need to make those phone calls. Okay, let's talk about this one on mindset. So, you know, if anyone can think about a situation where you felt completely overwhelmed, so much so where you felt like I just couldn't get it done, whether it was a test, whether it's working on a project, dealing with teammates, what have you. What did you learn, if anything, about yourself in that process? Any takers?
Anyone want to share? I mean, I can think of several situations that I've been in that apply here. Getting my doctorate, like writing dissertation, having, tried and developed various businesses, being a parent, like for the first time, all of these, are situations that can feel overwhelming. I would say one of the main things that I learned is that I'm, more powerful than I think, or I may give myself credit for, and just having this mindset that maybe if something's difficult, it's not that I can't do it, it's just I can't do it yet.
I love that, Aisha. As you said at the end of, I can't do this yet. And that reframing, I think, is so powerful for many because, as you said, it may just be in the moment of something, but the ability to overcome it in some situation, you haven't boxed yourself out. You haven't put the artificial barrier in front of you to say, oh, it's never going to be done and I can't, I'm a failure, whatever the topic is. I appreciate you sharing that.
I'm someone who's very self-reliant. And so my default is kind of just to get it done and just do it myself. And I've learned over the years that if I can bring someone into helping me, firstly, they're going to have ideas that are completely different to what I would come up with, and quite often better. And so what we end up with is a much better solution. And having someone share like the emotional and psychological load is just like, we're doing it together, we're not alone. But also, I've learned over the years that it's just better to take people with you on the journey, because if you can take people along with you, especially as a leader, then you're actually equipping people as you do. And so you're not only creating a better outcome, you're, relieving the load off yourself, but you're actually investing into someone else. And for me, at the end of the day, that's actually one of my highest values, is that if I can invest into someone else and bring them along, then it's worth it. So I think, we can turn these situations of feeling completely overwhelmed and tapped out into something that, maybe it might take a little bit longer to get to the end goal if you're doing it, with other people, but the end results is going to be so much better all around.
I love that, Melissa. I think this, as you said, of creating it, it creates a bit of an opportunity or space for others to step up into something. And as you said, it also reveals a big thing of not having to be the smartest in the room, not having to have all the answers, but collectively that group is, taking the idea forward. You may have just happened to be a spark to get others to rise to the occasion. And then you realize maybe your emotional and concern level just starts to drop because you're like, wait a minute, I got others that are in this with me as well. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So I know there's a bunch of questions or ones going into the chat. I don't know, Melissa or Aisha, if you, is there anything there to respond to or not?
Pretty much comments. People are some people can't be on camera, so they're just kind of commenting and affirming what you're saying. So
Okay, got
it's
it. All
all, it's
right.
all
So,
good. No questions yet, though.
okay. If so, we can bring them up. Um, all right. So let's flip it into the AI driven world. So an AI driven world. What do I mean by this? As an old timer, and I say old timer meaning further enough in tenure for some of the younger folks on the call, is, how is the market evolving from a perspective that has been very different over the last, set of decades. And AI is not new by any means. It is originated many years back in the 50s foremost around looking at way that machines can evolve and help to solve specific problems that could be in the aid of its end user. The last, if I call it, 30 years or so, 40 perhaps or more, have been laying the foundation for what it is that we're seeing today. So for a lot of us, it is a retraining of how we use these tools in a day in, day out. But for those that are just starting out as an entrepreneur, this is a golden moment. If I were to tell myself 25 years ago to go learn one particular tool or set of tools, would be everything that we're talking about in the market today. And let me just put this in parallel, from an industrial revolution shift is that, when the steam shovel came out, there's opportunity here to say, no longer should be digging with your hands or with a shovel manually, but wait, I could be using something that has much more power to actually accomplish the same task, but with a 10x sort of impact. That's what we're here and seeing today, but perhaps at a 100x impact. But it's not about using a shovel per se. A lot of it is your creativity and your critical thinking of how you ask questions and interact with a system to help you formulate the idea. So the comments earlier about which startup, which idea, how to think about it, AI can be one of the best resources, which we'll see in a second, about how to really frame and reframe your problem to help you think through things that you may not know because you've not been in the industry yet, which actually is to your benefit. I think a lot of folks that have been very much in the market for so long, they know what problem potentially to go after and solve because they've seen a lot of things. They've got a lot of experiences from it. But for those that are younger in tenure, you don't have recency bias. You don't have something to say, well, I've seen it done 100 times and it must be then done the same way, just using AI. No, you're able to look at the problem very differently and say, well, wait, can this be done in a whole different way? Great. How do I approach it that way? So think of that as a great gift that you should take in to your own advantage to look at things a little bit differently. So I talked about this a little bit already. Short answer is this has been building for years. And the foundation from PCs, internet, cloud, mobile have all been foundational points technologically that is allowing us to then afford to have this experience that we are right now with AI today. So it's not as if it just came out of nowhere 2.5 years ago, per se. But obviously, it did come onto the scene with the rise of GPT-3 and kind of the explosion into the market. But foundationally, AI is only good as the data it has access to, which does create this sort of scenario. So many people think about AI and they think about just interacting with GPT or an agent or some sort of workflow-based tool, but you have to really realize what is powering it and also what is fueling it. And the powering of it being that of the infrastructure and the usage of the tools. But most importantly is AI is only good as the data it has access to. And whether that's your own information that you're supplying it or providing it out there today, a lot of the experience that we have through any one of the Copilot based solutions, so Anthropics or OpenAI's or Gemini or go down the list, is largely in many ways trained on information that we have out there today vis-a-vis the internet. And so that arises itself to then, what sort of experience you have. But I put this out here in a couple things. So as entrepreneurs, and this is again from my viewpoint only, is that a lot of software applications have been built over the decades, many decades. And so you have an ability to say, as a startup, am I building something brand new that no one else has built before? Possibly the answer is yes, but there's a lot of companies that have built great technology in prior and now are reimagining those applications with AI. And this is the first time I've seen in my history where you can reimagine a lot of applications that are currently out there today and being able to infuse AI, whether both predictive or generative, in a way to make the experience far more impactful. So why do I paint this picture? Is as an entrepreneur that wants to start an AI startup, one of the biggest challenges you're going to have is distribution. Are you going to get people's attention? Are you going to be able to get them to have an interest to try what it is you're doing? Because the hardest thing you are contending with is human behavior. Someone willing to try something different than what they are using today. And that goes whether in technology or not. It's just human behavior if you decide to do something versus not. And so it's an opportunity to really think about that. And we'll talk about it a little bit more detail as you think about bringing your application to market, is really ultimately getting someone to spend the time and energy to use it. And we've seen that especially with the App Store, that there's so many apps, but if you really look at your phone, for those that use the phone, probably only really stay to a handful of applications day in and day out. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Gen AI because that's, I think, one of the, in my career, one of the success points of multiple startups. But when we talked about this idea of purpose, for us, it has really been around helping people discover, learn, and grow. The formation of the company happened within about 72 hours. We knew immediately there was an idea and an opportunity to build a business around this. And from this, we realized that with the wave of AI, that if we could help contribute to this sort of societal shift and helping to provide the right type of content or content that people would find useful in their journey, then how do we help make that a reality? And so as a company, today we've helped over 220 customers. I sit on the board of GeniWorks, and the team has done a tremendous job of helping a lot of startups build visibility, build their distribution. And the reason why this is so important is that you can now build an application very quickly, meaning in hours, if not minutes, if you're really good at what you're doing. But let's call it hours and days versus weeks, months, years. And so ultimately, that becomes a big challenge for companies to get noticed because so many things are coming out. So what we wanted to do was to help startups build their story, build their visibility, to put it in the hands of others for the hope that they may have a chance of building the adoption that they need and getting the feedback they need of whether that product is valuable or not. Community wise, it's quite extensive. It's across LinkedIn, newsletters, influencers, etc., with a lot of social impact, if you will. Now, a reality with all this is as it's grown and it's been in the leaderboard for now 2.5 years, those things do change. You don't become the leader anymore because others are moving fast and moving faster than you are. And so, we've realized as a company that we want to stay true to the roots of providing the most unbiased information in the goal of helping others, that the leaderboard aspect is perhaps not the only thing that we want to care about. We want to make sure that what we're providing has a socioeconomic impact of helping someone who may be not able to go to school and afford it, but have an opportunity, have access to information and learning online, as some folks said prior, to be able to maybe build an application very quick. And so the company, over the years, we helped to buy a hackathon company that helped then an opportunity for people to take their ideas into actions within days and to learn very, very quickly. So there's courses out there that you can take for free to help learn the vibe methods of really the critical thinking to move your application forward fast. And so we think that has a pretty powerful impact. And as I said, leaderboard, what have you, a lot of good stuff. And pretty humbling when you can see that the company name is next to some of the greatest of companies that I've seen technologically. And so it carries a different weight for us of, sure, it's nice to see this as number one, but the reality is it requires and says that we have a strong duty to make sure that what we're doing can provide benefit for others. And not simply just for the parade of, we're leading in certain categories. But all this simply says is that we have found a niche and an area where what we've put out has high engagement. And in the social realm of things, that translates potentially into audience time and what people are interacting with. So as you build applications potentially using AI, you're going to realize that you are vying for someone's attention that is very, very limited. And so thinking about distribution, how to get to those customers, have those conversations authentically, ultimately based on how you show up as a founder, is the utmost important, I think, points of why someone will care about what it is you're bringing to market because they see value that is beyond simply you trying to make a quick buck. And I think that's an important thing just to carry with you because people do see the intentionality of what it is that you are bringing to market. Okay, diving a little bit deeper, the AI landscape, this might be new news for some, it may be old news for others. There's a lot of different forms within the family of artificial intelligence and how it comes together. So this is more of a rubric that people can take and leverage. But the center point, as you can see here, of LLMs and transformers have been all the rage over the last 5+ years since Google has released its main paper of attention is all you need around the transformer model, which has been the basis for a lot of what we have seen in the market today in using these large language models in production or in the applications you do use from any of the providers I mentioned before. But the point is that the AI landscape, is much more broad than simply what I would call the craze, if you will, that's happening in the market online that you see. And so if any of this is interesting to you from a mathematics, sciences, or engineering perspective, is to potentially explore some of these other areas that can be quite interesting to dig into. Agents. So everyone's been talking about this over the last year, but it's getting more and more over the last 6 months. And I try to just put this, simplistically here is like we are as individuals, an agent can perform a task. And on a team, you're sharing information, you're working on a topic, you're working on a critical deliverable. Agents have the ability to also do tasks and also be, if you will, digital team members in ways that you work. And so for all or majority of the tools that many people are using today to do vibe coding or to interact with GPT models, such as GPT-4 or Claude's recently released 4.5, you're interfacing with a chatbot-based interface, but beneath that are a tremendous amount of model capabilities that are working in concert to deliver the results that you're seeing, being able to see the reasoning of it, but also multiple tasks that are being done. So why do I say this? Is that oftentimes as an entrepreneur, you think about, wait, I'm the only person. What I have to go hire a team. I got to go meet a lot of different people. I got to bring them on board. Well, that is part of the answer, perhaps, depending on the skill set and the need. But also, what we have in front of us is tremendous because you do have someone that can be a PR writer, somebody that can write code, somebody that can do a marketing brief, somebody that can help to build a website, somebody that can help to actually deliver an implementation plan. So you think about the type of work and what you need as an entrepreneur. There's so much resource that you can leverage today to do, I think, one of the biggest things that probably goes under positioned in so much of the work is giving you feedback and improving your confidence or challenging your hypothesis of what it is you want to bring to market. So, as an example, if you had an idea to go launch a product, as I said before, your traditional way might be to go, well, let me go talk to my parents, let me go talk to my friends, let me go talk to some random people that I've never met before. And you're going to get those opinions, right? But that's a lot of time that you're doing to calculate and structure your conversation. You can sit with any one of the models today and absolutely have it respond in challenging why do you think this is going to work, or please tell me a situation where you think this is not going to work. And for it to not work, what else should I think about with this? So, why do I say that very simplistically is that the rise of using AI is really a challenge of our critical thinking depth. And what I mean by that is not only asking the first level question, but a secondary and tertiary question that therefore allows you to dig deeper into the problem set to refine your idea, to refine the way you think about what it is you're wanting to build far before you start to actually develop code. Melissa.
I love that you're talking about this and the critical thinking aspect of how we use AI. How important is it for us to think about the prompts and to get the answers? So, in other words, I do use AI to kind of provide feedback on ideas and to test, is this a good idea or what could I do better? Um, but I do wonder sometimes if I'm asking leading questions, are there things that we can do to ask better prompts to get results that maybe we wouldn't be necessarily looking for, but we need to know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are a couple great things to call it in your comments there. One is putting it in the kind of first person situation of I am this type of user and I am trying to accomplish X and I am doing that in this type of setting. Could you help frame for me a way to think about this problem knowing these conditions? So oftentimes you're putting a boundary around a topic that you're in, but you're giving more situational context or situational awareness around what it is you're doing. And that allows for, in many ways, for someone to give a better response. So if you came to me and said, Jay, I need help in this particular area, and you just asked me a particular question, but I didn't have so much context around all of the variables of what was going on, I might give you a very narrow answer. And you might go, oh, that's good, but gosh, it could have been a lot better. So what I've done now a lot is when someone wants help on something, I say, okay, let me ask a little bit more around the condition so I can better respond to a way knowing how you're thinking about it. And that's the same way that I'll call it the machine works in the sense that the context matters. And so your context window, that's the whole definition of how much information you can put in that gets tokenized, that can come back. But the way you frame the question is so vitally important. So that's one great way to kind of create a boundary box. The other is to do the inverse, is tell me why this won't work and why are all the reasons that this would fail and what should I look out for? And so you're asking the inverse of what it is you're hoping to get a response to. And the other thing is you have to be mindful of, and I just more recently have joked about this, but you see how these model interactions can be very engaging because it comes back with a very affirmative response. Ah, Melissa, this is a great idea. And then it gives you a bunch of information. Well, what that has done is elicited very much like a social interaction. Oh, wow, I got a like, I got a comment, I got a positive. And so you're therefore in a better mood to then respond through things. But you as an individual have to have a critical eye to say, this seems a little bit off and challenge it. just as like you would challenge your friend to say they tell you something, you're like, yeah, maybe that's not entirely factual. What about this? And so I think the important thing is one, have a critical eye at the information that it comes back on. Assume it's not perfect and assume to refine and ask that secondary, tertiary questions, but try to frame it up in a way that, can give that you can give it more context about what it is you're trying to do and your ultimate goal. And that's probably the biggest thing I have seen where I have in many just even recent situations, helped to reframe a problem that I thought I was looking at one way and completely open my eyes to a whole different way to think about it. And I think that's just, you know, as a user, a way that we constantly have to interact with these versus, top level service questions. But I think the biggest one I want to say is, yeah, don't ever assume it is right. Always challenge it because the other flip side of this, people will think, well, this is the easy button. It's just providing me an answer. That's what must be what it is. This is the worst thing we can do. Because you're really not learning anything. And what you should be learning is really how to interrogate, the response and try to make it deeper, better, more refined. So, okay. Um, all right. So for anyone that is building AI applications, so one thing we shared in a webinar over the summer is that in a business, you really try to do four things. You want to build an impactful product or service. You want to be able to attract customers. You want to be able to convert those customers. You want to be able to optimize the price and the value and the margin. So optimize the price to them of what they're willing to pay for and the value to them, as well as margin, meaning are you making something that has some profitability to what it is you're doing? And then you want to be able to retain those customers and hopefully sell them more. So in business, we kind of do those four things day in and day out, almost no matter what business line that you're in. Now, if you think about this, item number one has become a lot easier in the last 2 years. And it's getting better and better such that you can, as an entrepreneur, take an idea and start to vibe code something very quickly. And vibe coding has I think some people love the statement, some don't. I like to call it vibe methods because you are not necessarily coding. The machine is, but you are taking your thought stream and consciousness into building something and framing it very quickly, and getting a lot of feedback. But because this became so much easier, not perfect by any means, it means that it's a lot more people can do it and do it very quickly. And so the bigger thing you need to think about is how are you actually going to get out in front of people to validate and test it. And that's kind of what the mission is we did with GeniWorks, but it's an opportunity to bring awareness out into a market very quickly itself. So just think about that, that it has gotten a lot easier and ideas are great, but again, still executing is what matters. Um, and so I think as kind of talked about this before, and I'll kind of be brief on this to get to a couple final points, but sometimes when startups are, funded, let's say pre-AI era, so the last 3 years, a lot of the money has certainly been going to building the application and a lot less to selling it and a lot less to delivering the value to a customer. And so you spend a lot of time selling things to people. You're hiring a lot of people to go do that. But things have changed dramatically when it comes to, agents. And when you think about perhaps three big things you have to do when you take an idea from concept into potentially a vibe method to get to some prototyping to then potentially get something that you could publish out, say through social networking by building a LinkedIn page and showcasing that is using a lot of the digital labor or agents again as team members to help you build that very, very quickly. But the three things you should think about, especially in this attention deficit economy, and what I mean by that is, as we said, getting someone's time to focus on your application is really the biggest challenge. You may have the most technically superior capability, something you brought to market, but getting someone's time can be a challenge. Let's focus on three things: the brand around what it is that you're doing and why that's unique and different so people will remember you. It's impactful. Two is the audience. Who can you bring it out to that is, uh, you know, going to be the way that's going to give you validation? I think the comment mentioned earlier about following somebody on YouTube because they had great comments about AI tools and what have you. Obviously, that captivated you. So they started building an audience. And it's something you're going back to and constantly learning. And three is ultimately very clear of the value that the application or the product brings to an end user versus just being a great idea you think that people should buy. And in turn, all this creates trust. By all three of these dimensions allows you to really kind of do the biggest thing that you should do, which is being able to rapidly iterate on that product and ultimately delight your customers. So I come back to this in a very simplistic form is that the distribution, the tools, a lot of ways to bring your idea to market are there, and the social aspects that we all have access to are great vehicles to make that happen. So um, I'll pass this on because we already talked about this one about don't chase the money, really focus on solving the problem is a very important point because money will run out and oftentimes will, avoid you or evade you, I should say. So really focusing on the problem that you're trying to solve. And I do this infomercial for a friend of mine, DT. She's been great. Started this company, Bolo.ai, out of a great passion. And so, why do I share this for young entrepreneurs? Is DT's done something where her solution and capability from an AI perspective is focused on the energy markets and driving greater efficiency for energy operators. And one thing we were talking about as we're walking through the streets of Palo Alto was she's like, well, how do I start to put this out there and make some more visibility of it? And I was telling her about GeniWorks and all things we could help her with. But I said, here's a different thing, DT. You want to show the authenticity of the fact that, you know what, you worked in these fields, these oil fields, in a very male-dominant environment, but you as a female leader forge your way to figure this out. And, from that creates a whole different degree of confidence to investors as well as potentially customers because you're showcasing something of, hey, I've been there, I've done that. I have experience in this. And so often part of this is when you're out there marketing your business is you're thinking, I need to be on the billboard. I need to be on the radio. I need to be on the TV to get the awareness. But again, come back to a bit of the authenticity, the experiences that you have, because so often customers are enamored and drawn to things that are being built by founders that are solving unique and challenging problems that perhaps they've been through in prior as well. Okay, so getting started, I want to say one big thing, back to the idea question, and like yourself, myself as well, early in career was writing down ideas left and right. And I think it was more the excitement of writing all these ideas, and I could go try to solve all these. But the biggest thing someone told me was just take a step back and look and observe the world of where things are painful, inefficient, not working, that can be done a little bit better. And why this is so important is you don't have to redefine physics. You don't have to redefine how planes are flown, excuse me. You could very well do the latter. Doing the former, I don't think is going to happen. Now, that being said, means you don't have to go define something that the world has never seen before to therefore have the merits of, being the entrepreneur. Look at things that are, highly wasteful or repetitive or impactful that you're seeing in your everyday life and really come back to a first principles perspective like, can this be done a different way? And how would I look at this problem? Right. And so often we are a product of our environment, and we therefore assume that things are set up the way they are, and therefore that is the rule. Well, that is true when it comes to if we go into government and law and certain, rules around certain things. But when it comes to building new products or solutions, you have the ability to really rethink the problem. And I think as a youngster, you have an opportunity to truly do that because you know no different and say, well, I think I can do this a whole different way and make it better than what it is today. So often the idea might actually be right in front of you. You don't have to stargaze so much to think of the thing that no one else is thinking about. I empathize with that because we've all done that many times over. So it comes back to two things. What are you passionate about? Because it will be the thing that keeps you going day in and day out. And two, is it something that people are willing to pay for? And pay for is not, are they simply willing to put money in a bank account for something that you built, but are they willing to give up their time? So again, the attention that you can give to the topic. And so when you have both of those components, you're likely onto something because it has value to what someone cares about. And two, is something that intrinsically is motivating you to solve. And having both those together is really going to be the thing that's enduring for you as you go on this journey. I put this out here. I'll just say infomercial. I got to meet Henry over the summer. Great individual, bringing and cultivating what you call the lean AI startups or the lean AI, yeah, startups list. You can check this out, but this is really a list that's been growing. He's done a wonderful job of curating how small companies are building great products with very small teams. And if anything I can take from this is a learning of like, wow, I got to relearn how to use agents and product capabilities to round out the rest of a business to make it scale versus traditionally having to go hire so many people that have a very significant cost. So there's a complete relearning of how companies are building solutions today. And for anyone just starting out, I think there's a wealth of information to look at different companies that are doing this with very, very lean operations to start with. So where to get started? So I was actually originally going to just open up a prompt and start working on if it was lovable as an example. But I stepped back for a reason to say, look, there's really three things that folks need to spend time in doing. One is you can pick any one of your comforted GPTs or co-pilots and using that as a complete resource as your sounding board. So as an entrepreneur, refining your idea, challenging your idea, asking questions of what else you can think about in that particular space. As I said, why doesn't it work? As to Melissa's question, how to ask deeper about the topic of the problem, because you're going to get far more feedback, far faster and far deeper. Because you can almost think about it as a sounding board of dozens of people, giving you some insights. But again, the critical eye really here is to iterate because taking something at face value and getting the feedback on it is going to be very, very limited, just like you're getting feedback from one potential buyer versus having 5 or 50. So the sample size matters. Therefore, the repetitiveness matters significantly. The second bit of that too is your ability to take some of that refined ideas into requirements to then say, now I can actually sit down and potentially write something out. So I've used not all of them, but I've used four of the 5 listed here to work on different applications. And the beauty of doing so allowed me to take this creative idea and actually what I wrote out of step 1 into a very basic visual and something that take my idea into raw form into something visual allowed for a different thing to communicate when I was talking to somebody because before I was just listing out a bunch of requirements, trying to help them understand the way that I see the world by using my hands and saying this is how it is and drawing it. But remember, everybody comes from a different perspective. So using the ability to vibe code something very quickly to show how an application might work and how it might interact. And don't worry if it doesn't look pretty or not at this juncture, you're wanting to get feedback and you're wanting to get usability. The coolness though of this is that for every person you interact with, you can immediately take that feedback and change the way it looks within seconds. And whereas before, it would take someone a lot of time to gather feedback, go write it up, go sit with the developer, try to figure out how to go build it, and then come back and present something 2 weeks later. And by that time, someone's already forgot and walked on. So your ability to really iterate and fine tune this idea of this application and asking questions about it, you can do with any one of these tools day in, day out. And like I said, last time we talked about this 6 months ago, very different. So my personal one that I like quite a bit is Lovable, but I've talked with so many people that prefer all other ones, and there's a lot more now on the scene as well. Now, testing it. So thankfully with social media, you can, absolutely, you don't have to necessarily form a company. I think on LinkedIn, you can create a group, but for others, if you are a company, you have to form, the company itself before you can, list a group. But it doesn't prevent you from any way, sharing your idea. You've created a basic website, a basic mock-up, and be able to share with people to get feedback. because what you want to do is to get the feedback of why someone likes something or not. But it's ultimately going to be a way where, here you can get a lot of feedback from individuals to understand and help to shape it further. And so my simple view, if as I start or evolve any sort of application or need, I tend to sit around all three of these things to do things very, very quickly, to refine how I approach it in a problem, to get the feedback I want before I spend a tremendous amount of time developing something. Because what you care about right now is refining your market signal and refining what it is your idea is in front of somebody in a way to help shape it far better than you started with. So, as comments were said, a lot of free resources are out there, a tremendous amount of resources, but these are just kind of three basics if I would.
Thank you so very much, Jay. That was amazing. Every single time I hear you speak on this topic, I feel like I just get a little bit wiser. So that's always a good feeling. But really, really appreciate your time and just everything you shared here today. And if we could have a link to share, that would be wonderful, Jay. Thank you so much.
You bet. Absolutely. Well, glad to be here, and thanks for the time, and certainly, we'll be a resource for folks.